I guess I should start by giving you a little background about me and my wife, Jessica. We were together for nearly 8 years, married for 5. To the outside world, we seemed like the perfect couple. We had our little quirks, of course, like how I loved cooking while she preferred takeout. But we got along well, shared the same sense of humor, and enjoyed our weekends at home binge-watching shows or going out with friends. Life was pretty good, or at least I thought it was. Things began to shift a few months ago. It started slowly. Jessica began acting distant and I could feel a change in the air. At first, I brushed it off as her being busy with work. She had just gotten a promotion and I figured she was stressed. I noticed her coming home later than usual, but she'd always have an excuse ready. I had to catch up on a project, or we went out for drinks after work. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust my wife. But in the pit of my stomach, something felt off. Then there were the little things. She started taking her phone. Everywhere, even to the bathroom. I remember joking about it once, saying, "What are you texting the president?" She laughed it off, but it didn't sit right with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night I woke up to find her scrolling through her phone in the dark. When I asked her who she was texting, she snapped back, "Why do you always have to snoop? Can't a girl have her privacy?" That was the first time I felt a pang of betrayal, like a little seed of doubt was being planted in my mind. Fast forward a couple of weeks and I was a bundle of nerves. I started noticing small inconsistencies in her stories. She mentioned hanging out with a new friend from work, a guy named Mark. "He's super cool, really funny," she said, rolling her eyes when I asked if he was single. I shrugged it off at first. A lot of my friends had female coworkers. It was no big deal, right? But then came the night of the concert. I had bought tickets to see her favorite band, a birthday gift that she never seemed to appreciate. I was excited, but when the day came, she told me she couldn't go. She claimed she had to work late, a last-minute project that couldn't wait. I was disappointed, but I didn't want to pressure her. So I gave her the tickets, told her to enjoy her night, and went about my evening. That was the moment everything changed. I spent some time scrolling through social media and saw a post from a friend at the concert. In the background, there was Jessica, laughing with a guy who looked strikingly familiar. My heart sank. I squinted at my phone, and there it was, Mark. They were side by side, arms around each other, completely lost in the moment. The world felt like it was crumbling around me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I felt sick to my stomach, and a wave of anger washed over me. I had trusted her. I had given her the freedom to enjoy a night out, never thinking she'd betray me like this. I stared at the photo for what felt like hours, my mind racing. I knew I needed proof, so I started digging. I found more photos, more posts. She was with him again, another night out, another excuse. The pieces fell into place and I could see the picture clearly now. When she got home later that night, I was waiting for her. My heart was beating like a drum and I felt a mix of rage and betrayal. I confronted her about Mark and the concert. Her face turned pale and I watched her scramble for the right words. "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice shaking. "We were just hanging out." As I stood there, the anger boiled over. "Just hanging out? You're on a date with another man, Jess. You lied to me." That was just the beginning of a confrontation that spiraled into chaos. She tried to deny everything, twisting her words, claiming it wasn't a big deal, that I was being paranoid. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. That night marked a turning point for me. I knew then that this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. Jessica wasn't just my wife. She was a stranger to me now. The betrayal hit hard, and the emotional roller coaster I was about to embark on would change everything. I was in for a ride I never signed up for. The days following the confrontation were a blur, like I was moving in slow motion while the world around me sped up. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every time I closed my eyes I saw Jessica's face in that concert photo, grinning with Mark. I felt trapped in my own mind, endlessly replaying the moments we shared, questioning every word, every laugh, every memory. How could I have been so blind? The anger I felt towards her morphed into a deep sadness, a feeling of betrayal that settled heavily in my chest. Jessica tried to talk to me after that first confrontation, but I couldn't stomach it. I wasn't ready for her excuses or her watery-eyed apologies. I was still processing the shock of finding out my wife had been unfaithful. I could hear her voice in my head, the same voice that had promised to love me through thick and thin, now echoing lies. Can we just talk about this? She pleaded one evening as I sat on the couch, my mind elsewhere. I didn't mean for it to happen. Didn't mean for it to happen. I interrupted, my voice rising. You think that's an excuse? You made a choice, Jess. You chose to go see a concert with him instead of being honest with me. You chose to lie. The anger surged up again like a tidal wave crashing against my resolve. She looked at me, her eyes wide and desperate. I was lonely. You've been so busy with work, I just wanted to have fun. It didn't mean anything. Fun. I shot back. You think sleeping with another man is fun. You think lying to me was just a game. Her face twisted with frustration and she started shouting back. You don't understand. You're so wrapped up in your own world you don't see me anymore. I needed someone who paid attention, who made me feel alive. We went back and forth like this for what felt like hours, the air thick with anger and hurt. I could hardly recognize the woman I once loved. Each accusation and excuse from her felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into my heart. I finally yelled for her to leave the room, overwhelmed by emotions I didn't know how to process. After she stormed off, I felt the weight of our marriage pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to punch the wall, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there in silence, feeling hollow. I could barely recognize the life I had built. Every shared secret, every promise seemed to fade away like smoke. I spent the next few days in a haze. I went to work, sat at my desk, and pretended to focus while my mind drifted back to her. I found myself looking at our wedding photos, remembering the joy we shared on that day. But now those memories were tainted. I couldn't see the love anymore, just betrayal and sadness. I started doing some digging, not just on social media. I wanted to know more about Mark. Who was this guy who had stolen my wife's heart, at least temporarily? I discovered he worked at the same company in a different department. They had met at a team building event and hit it off, or so Jessica claimed. I wondered if she ever mentioned me to him, or if he was just another fling, another way for her to escape the life we had built together. My friends noticed something was off. One evening, my best friend Dave invited me out for drinks and I reluctantly accepted. I needed to talk, to vent, to let loose. As we sat at the bar, he looked at me, concern etched on his face. What's going on, man? You've seemed off for weeks. I sighed, the weight of my secret looming over me. It's Jessica, she cheated on me. The words felt foreign, slipping out like poison. Shit. I'm sorry, dude, he said, genuinely shocked. What's the plan? Are you going to try to work it out? I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Yeah, work it out, right. How do you work out something like that? It's not like we can just forget it happened. The conversation drifted, but I could tell he was concerned. He suggested I talk to someone, a professional who could help me process everything. You don't have to go through this alone, man. You deserve better than this. That night, I went home and tossed and turned in bed, thoughts racing. I realized I couldn't stay in this cycle of pain and confusion. I needed clarity and I needed to make a decision about what to do next. As the days turned into weeks, I felt like I was losing myself more and more. I couldn't bear being around Jessica, yet I couldn't avoid her. I was stuck in a limbo of love and betrayal, of anger and sadness. That was when I decided to take control. I would find my own way out of this mess, reclaim my life, and figure out what I wanted. I was done letting her narrative shape my reality. The thought of revenge crossed my mind, but I wasn't sure how to execute it. In my heart, I wanted her to feel the pain she had inflicted upon me, but I also knew that I needed to focus on myself first. Maybe it was time to shred the past and step into a better life. I just had to figure out how to do it. As the weeks dragged on, I slowly began to regain some semblance of control over my life. I started going to the gym more often, not just to work off the frustration and anger, but also to feel stronger, physically and mentally. I needed an outlet, a way to channel the storm brewing inside me. Every mile I ran on the treadmill felt like a step away from the betrayal, and every drop of sweat was a piece of the hurt washing away. The gym became my sanctuary, and I welcomed the temporary reprieve from the chaos of my thoughts. I also started seeing a therapist. It was something I had considered for a while but never made the leap. The first session was awkward, to say the least. I sat there, fidgeting in my chair, unsure of how to start. But as I began to share my story, it became clear to me how deeply the betrayal had affected me. The therapist listened, nodding along, and asked me questions that prompted me to dig deeper into my feelings. "Why do you think Jessica felt the need to cheat?" she asked one day, and I found myself grappling with that question. I realized I had been so focused on my hurt that I hadn't truly considered her perspective. Did she feel neglected? Had I failed her in some way? "It's hard to say," I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. "I thought we were happy. I thought she was content." "Relationships can be complex. It's often not just one factor that leads to actions like cheating," she said gently. "What matters now is how you choose to respond." Her words stuck with me. I knew I could either wallow in this pain or start to create a new narrative for myself. It was empowering, like I was slowly peeling back the layers of hurt and beginning to heal. But while I was working on myself, Jessica was still there. She was trying hard to reconnect, to show me how sorry she was. She'd leave little notes around the house, send me texts reminiscing about happier times, and even suggested a weekend getaway. It felt suffocating. I didn't want to pretend everything was fine. I wanted her to understand the gravity of what she had done. One evening, after yet another half-hearted attempt to connect, I snapped. "You can't just pretend everything is okay, Jess. You broke my trust. Do you even understand what that means?" She flinched, her face falling. I know, I'm trying to make things right. I love you and I want to fix this." I felt an explosion of frustration rise within me. "Love, is that what this is? You think love means lying and cheating?" Her eyes welled with tears, and for a moment I almost felt guilty. But I quickly pushed that feeling aside. I couldn't afford to let sympathy cloud my judgment. I needed to be firm. I needed to stand my ground. That's when I started crafting my plan. I wanted to show Jessica that actions have consequences. I didn't want to take the high road just for the sake of it. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. But I also knew I couldn't let my revenge consume me. It had to be calculated, a way to reclaim my power without losing myself in bitterness. I started by gathering evidence of her infidelity, screenshots of messages and social media posts, even a few photos I had saved. I thought about how I could use this to make my point without making it about revenge for the sake of revenge. Instead, it would be a way to confront her head-on, to dismantle the facade she had constructed after the affair. The day finally came. When I felt ready to confront her again, I called her into the living room, my heart racing. She walked in, her expression cautious, and I could tell she sensed something was coming. "Jess, I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, choosing my words carefully. "I've been working on myself, trying to process everything, but I need you to understand the impact of what you did." I took a deep breath and laid the evidence out before her. The screenshots, the photos, everything I had collected. I watched as her face turned pale as she realized this wasn't just a conversation, it was a reckoning. "Why would you do this?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with raw emotion. "You knew this would hurt me, you knew what you were risking." She sat there, mouth agape, trying to find the right words. I didn't think you'd find out. I thought I could keep it separate from us." "Keep it separate? You can't just compartmentalize betrayal like that. You broke our vows, Jess. You shattered my trust." At that moment, I felt a surge of empowerment. It was my turn to take control, to demand answers, to assert my worth. I watched as she fumbled for excuses, the facade of remorse cracking under the weight of reality. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I realize now how stupid I was. I love you. I want to make it right." But as I looked at her, I couldn't see the woman I had married. I saw someone who had made a choice, and that choice had consequences. "Love isn't enough to fix this," I replied, my voice firm. "You need to prove to me that you can be honest, that you can be trustworthy." I didn't know what would come next, whether we would work through this or if it would be the end of the line. But I knew one thing for certain: I was done being the victim. It was time to take control of my own narrative and decide what was next for me, with or without her. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks I felt hopeful. I was ready to reclaim my life, to live on my own terms, and that thought invigorated me. I was ready to shred the past and walk into a better future. The days that followed my confrontation with Jessica were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, staring down two divergent paths, one leading back to the familiar but tainted territory of our marriage, and the other into uncharted waters where I could reclaim my independence and self-worth. Jessica, after that confrontation, was a different person. She seemed more desperate to prove herself, often coming to me with apologies and promises to change. But each time she did, it felt like an empty gesture. I'd learned that words could be hollow, especially when they were coming from someone who had shattered the very foundation of trust we'd built. I started setting boundaries. I told her that I needed space to think, to process everything. It wasn't easy for either of us, and the tension in our home was palpable. I could feel her frustration and sadness, but I was firm about needing time alone. I began spending more nights at my friend Dave's place, using it as a temporary refuge while I figured out what I truly wanted. In those moments away from home, I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had neglected. I reconnected with my old interests, painting, reading, and even picking up my guitar again. I poured my emotions into art and music, using them as an outlet for the turmoil inside me. It was therapeutic, and I felt a flicker of joy creeping back into my life, something I thought I had lost for good. But despite my efforts, there were moments when the reality of the situation hit me like a freight train. I'd be driving to work and suddenly realize how profoundly my life had changed. The laughter we used to share felt like a distant memory, and I had to remind myself that I was not defined by her actions. I was still me, capable of love and joy, even if it felt buried under layers of hurt. One evening, as I was at Dave's, I received a text from Jessica. It was a simple message: "Can we talk? I miss you." I felt a pang of something, regret maybe, but I quickly pushed that aside. I knew that talking would only lead to more tears and empty promises, and I wasn't ready to dive into that emotional pit again. Dave noticed my hesitation. "You can't keep putting off the conversation forever, man," he said as he poured himself another drink. "You need to decide what you want. It's not fair to either of you to keep dancing around the issue." He was right, but I was terrified. The thought of facing Jessica again, of looking into her eyes and seeing the pain we'd both caused each other, filled me with dread. Yet I also knew that delaying the inevitable wouldn't help either of us. So, after some internal debate, I agreed to meet her the next day. When I arrived home, the atmosphere was tense yet charged with anticipation. Jessica sat on the couch, her eyes red from what I assumed were tears. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was to come. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I don't deserve it, but I really want to talk." I nodded, motioning for her to continue. "I'm listening. I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I know I messed up. I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to express. I never wanted to lose you, and I realize now how stupid I was to think I could keep things separate." I listened, my heart hardening with every word. "Jessica, it's not just about what you did. It's about the trust that's been shattered. I don't know if I can ever feel safe with you again." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I wish I could take it all back. I don't want to blame you, but I felt so alone. I thought I could escape that loneliness, but it only made things worse." The excuses felt like a bitter pill to swallow. I wanted to feel compassion, but the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. "You made a choice, Jess. You chose to cheat instead of coming to me. You could have talked to me, we could have worked on things together." "I know," she replied, her voice shaking. "I was afraid of losing you, of facing the truth. But I see now how wrong I was. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right." "Is that enough?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can you really prove to me that you're worth trusting again?" "It's going to take time, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that." "I'm willing to fight for us," she said, her words laced with desperation. "I'll go to counseling, I'll do whatever it takes to show you I'm committed. I just need a chance." It was a tempting offer, one I didn't take lightly. But as I stared at her, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just another round of empty promises. I had been down this road before, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to walk it again. "I need to think," I finally said, feeling the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I'm not ready to make any promises, but I'll consider what you've said. Her face fell, sadness washing over her features. I understand. Just know that I love you and I'll be waiting for you to decide. I left that conversation feeling more conflicted than ever. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her a chance to prove that she could change. But the other part of me knew I had to protect myself. The emotional scars were still fresh, and I wasn't sure if I could bear the risk of being hurt again. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of uncertainty loomed large. I had choices to make, choices that would shape my future and potentially impact the rest of my life. For the first time in a long while, I felt an inkling of hope, coupled with a sense of freedom. The decision was mine to make. I could choose to stay or choose to go, but whatever I decided, it had to come from a place of strength, not fear. In the silence of the night, I began to draft my own plan, a way forward that didn't involve being shackled to the past, but instead focused on building the future I wanted, with or without Jessica. I felt a stirring in my heart, a glimmer of confidence emerging from the darkness. I was ready to face whatever came next. The days turned into a week, and my mind was constantly weighing the options. I found myself oscillating between anger and longing, confusion and clarity. Every time I glanced at Jessica, I was reminded of how things used to be, a time when trust was unshakable and love felt effortless. But the other side of that memory was a painful truth I couldn't ignore. The betrayal, the lies, the shattered trust. As I continued to take time for myself, I leaned heavily into my new routines. I was still seeing my therapist, who helped me untangle the mess of emotions swirling in my mind. "What do you want, really?" she asked me one day, and I was caught off guard by the directness of the question. "I want to feel whole again," I responded, my voice shaky. "I want to love and be loved without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. But I also don't want to give up on my marriage without exploring all options." "Then what's stopping you?" she asked gently, leaning in as if to guide me through this complex emotional maze. "If you feel that there's a path to healing together, it's worth exploring. But you have to be honest with yourself first." That was the crux of it. I had to be honest about what I was feeling and what I wanted. I spent the next few days reflecting on my feelings for Jessica, thinking about the good times and the bad, the love we had shared, and the damage that had been done. I was torn between wanting to rebuild and the fear of enduring more heartache. I decided to take a leap of faith. I called Jessica and asked her to meet me at a local park. I needed an environment that felt neutral, somewhere I could think clearly without the heaviness of our home. When I arrived, she was already there, packing nervously as she spotted me approaching. "Hey," she said, trying to smile but failing to mask her anxiety. "Thanks for coming. Let's sit down," I suggested, gesturing to a bench overlooking the small lake. For a moment, we were silent, the rippling water reflecting the tension between us. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, choosing my words carefully. "About us, about everything that's happened, and I realized something." Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with hope. "What is it?" "I think I want to try," I said, my heart racing as I spoke the words. "I want to try to work through this, but it's going to take time, and I need you to understand how serious this is." "I'll do anything," she said earnestly, nodding fervently. "I'm committed to making this work. I love you, and I know I messed up. I'll prove it to you." "I need you to be patient," I continued, feeling a weight lift with each word. "I can't just forget what happened. I need to see real changes, real commitment on your part. That means counseling for both of us, and you'll need to be open and honest about everything. No more secrets." "Of course," she agreed eagerly. "I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes." As we talked, I could sense a shift in the energy between us. It felt different, like we were both finally willing to face the truth and do the hard work necessary to heal. We laid out a plan together. We would go to couples therapy, and I would continue to see my therapist on my own. We talked about setting boundaries, about rebuilding trust, and about being open and honest with each other moving forward. The conversation was cathartic, and for the first time in weeks I felt a sliver of hope. I realized that while our road ahead was fraught with challenges, it was also a chance for growth. We were not just rebuilding our marriage, we were also reestablishing our individual selves. Over the next several weeks, we committed to the process. We went to therapy together and individually, sharing our feelings and fears. It was uncomfortable at times, but I welcomed the discomfort. It meant we were digging deep, unearthing the roots of our issues. I started to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with beneath the hurt and the mistakes. Jessica was engaging, willing to listen, and eager to show me she was committed, not just to me, but to herself. I could see her doing the work as well. She was opening up about her loneliness, her fears, and the reasons she had strayed. But there were still moments when doubt crept in. I'd find myself questioning her motives or wondering if she was still talking to Mark. I had to confront those feelings openly, and Jessica had to reassure me constantly that she was fully devoted to our healing process. As we continued to work through the hurdles, I began to feel a shift within myself. I was learning to forgive not just Jessica, but myself for allowing the situation to unfold as it did. I was taking back my power, refusing to let the betrayal define me. I was moving forward, one step at a time, toward a future that felt uncertain but hopeful. One night we were curled up on the couch, watching a movie, and I looked over at her. In that moment I felt a spark of connection. It was as if I could see the love in her eyes again, a love that had been buried under the weight of betrayal but was starting to resurface. "Jess," I said softly, "I think we can do this. I think we can rebuild." Her face lit up, and for a moment all the pain felt distant. We both knew it wouldn't be easy, but as we sat together, I realized that the journey ahead was worth it. I had chosen to fight for us, and in doing so, I had also chosen to fight for myself. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt lighter. The future was still uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to face it, together with Jessica, or, if necessary, on my own. The journey was just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. As weeks turned into months, Jessica and I continued our journey of healing. We committed to our therapy sessions, both as a couple and individually. Each session peeled back layers of hurt and resentment, but it also revealed opportunities for growth and understanding. We spoke openly about our feelings, the mistakes we had made, and how we could nurture the love that had been overshadowed by betrayal. One night, after a particularly productive session, we sat on the couch, exhausted but energized. Jessica turned to me and said, "I never realized how much we had lost touch with each other. I want to make sure we never let that happen again." Her sincerity hit me hard. I felt a rush of emotions, gratitude, love, and a renewed commitment. We had both put in the work, but it was clear that we needed to continue fostering our connection. We started planning regular date nights, small adventures, and even revisiting hobbies we once enjoyed together, like cooking. I remember one evening when we decided to make homemade pizza. We laughed as we fumbled with the dough, and I felt the warmth of intimacy growing. It was as if we were rediscovering each other in some ways, learning to communicate and share joy again. That shared laughter and playfulness was the foundation we needed to rebuild. Yet, the journey wasn't without its trials. There were moments when insecurities would surface, those nagging questions about whether Jessica was truly committed or if I was making a mistake by trusting again. I had to confront those feelings head-on, sometimes sharing them with Jessica, sometimes working them out in therapy. One evening, I brought up my fears during a therapy session. "I want to believe we can move forward, but I'm scared," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I don't want to keep reliving the past in my mind. I want to trust her, but it's hard." Jessica took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting understanding and concern. "I know it's hard for you. I can't change the past, but I'm committed to showing you that I can be trusted again. It's going to take time, and I'm here for the long haul, no matter how tough it gets." Those words resonated with me. I realized that rebuilding trust was a gradual process, one that required patience and effort from both of us. We had to be willing to face the discomfort and uncertainty together. In those moments of vulnerability, I felt our bond strengthening, and I began to see glimmers of the love we once shared. As we settled into the rhythm of our new routine, life began to feel more normal. I found solace in our conversations, the shared laughter, and the moments of silence that felt comfortable rather than strained. I learned to appreciate the small victories, like when Jessica remembered to text me during the day just to say she was thinking of me, or when we enjoyed a spontaneous dance party in the living room while cooking dinner. One afternoon, as I was making coffee, Jessica entered the kitchen and wrapped her arms around me from behind. "You know," she said, her voice light, "I always thought we had a good marriage before, but now it feels different, like we're building something even stronger." I turned to face her, searching for the right words. "It's not just about what we had, it's about what we're creating together now. I believe we're on the right path." With every passing day, I felt the walls around my heart crumbling. I wasn't just forgiving Jessica, I was forgiving myself for the pain I had endured and allowing myself to be vulnerable again. It was liberating. As we approached our anniversary, I reflected on how far we had come. The emotions were still raw, but the healing was evident. I decided to surprise Jessica with a small getaway, a chance to create new memories without the weight of the past looming over us. We went to a cozy cabin in the mountains, surrounded by nature. The air was fresh, and the serenity of the environment brought peace to my mind. We hiked, cooked together, and talked for hours by the fire, reminiscing about our journey and dreaming about the future. It felt as though we were starting anew, shedding old layers and embracing the love we were rebuilding. On the last night of our trip, as we sat outside under a blanket of stars, I turned to Jessica. "I can't believe how much we've been through," I said, my heart full. "You're not just my wife. You're my partner, my friend, and I'm grateful for the chance to start again." "I feel the same way," she replied, her eyes shining with sincerity. "Thank you for believing in us, even when it was hard." I promised to keep working on myself, on us. In that moment, I realized that healing was not a destination but an ongoing journey. It was about embracing the uncertainty and finding strength in vulnerability. I had learned to trust again, not just Jessica but myself. I found resilience in the face of betrayal, proving that love could endure even the darkest of times. As we returned home, I felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted. I had reclaimed my sense of self, and while the scars of the past would always be there, they no longer defined me. I had emerged from the storm with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of what it meant to love and to be loved. Life may not be perfect, but it was ours, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next together. In the end, I realized that while the past was a part of our story, it was the choices we made moving forward that would truly shape our future. And I was determined to make it a beautiful one.